فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ يرفع إبراهيم القواعد من البيت وإسماعيل ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. And mention when Abraham was raising the foundations of the house, and with him Ismail, saying, Our Lord, accept this from us. Indeed, you are the hearing, the all-knowing. First and foremost, Jami'an, Salaamu Alaikum wa Rahmatullah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted all of your great deeds and a'mal, especially your fasting, your recitations of the Quran, your du'as and supplication, and foremost, all of your endeavor towards the social aspect of your deeds, the sponsorship of the programs, your volunteer work, and inshallah every step that you have taken on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this beautiful month. And with the hope and the prayer that inshallah Allah will grant all of us the maximum amount of bounties and blessings and rewards on the upcoming days, nights, and especially on the layali and the nights of Qadr by reciting loud salawat. And let us remember all of the marhumin and marhumat, the beloved ones, the newly deceased ones from the community, and inshallah we can include their souls within the sawab of this majalis by reciting the second salawat followed by Surah Al-Fatiha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, our third salawat and the most important salawat with the utmost amount of sincerity and full of energy in the honor of Imam of Time, Hazrat Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman, Ajjalallah ta'ala farajah al-Sharif. Allahumma salli ala Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We're thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this bounty to be able to gather around in this beautiful month of Ramadan, and the days and nights are going even faster than the speed of the light, I would say. So for that we're thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we started a discussion on the famous khutbah, the famous sermon of Nabi Rasulullah known as Khutbah al-Sha'baniyah, in which Nabi Rasulullah talks to the companions as they were approaching the month of Ramadan. In that sermon, Nabi Rasulullah starts to give descriptions of the month that is arriving upon them. And as we had this discussion before, this description is not something to go over them once and then say, okay, now I know about the month, so I will start the journey. No, these descriptions must be reviewed and must be renewed and must be reconnected to, reflected upon every day and every night of the month of Ramadan. Why? Because of the importance of the time that we are in. This whole Shahr of Ramadan, right? The month of Rahmah, the month of Maghfirah, the month of mercy, the month of forgiveness, the month of bounties, the month of rewards. This month, right, is that unique month in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala maximizes his his mercy in a way that he tries, like literally speaking, every possible thing to make us gain a little bit more from his mercy. Right? The bare minimum we do is fasting. But that's just the starting, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So we start going through the different descriptions of the month that Nabi Rasulullah talks about it. He says, وَشَحْرٌ دُعِيتُمْ فِيهِ إِلَىٰ ضِيَافَةِ اللَّهِ وَجُعِلْتُمْ فِيهِ مِنْ أَهْلِ كَرَامَةِ اللَّهِ أَنْفَاسُكُمْ فِيهِ تَسْبِيحٌ وَنَوْمُكُمْ فِيهِ عِبَادَةٌ وَعَمَلُكُمْ فِيهِ مَقْبُولٌ. We get to this point, عَمَلُكُمْ فِيهِ مَقْبُولٌ, which means in this month your deeds will be accepted. So now this deed being accepted is a very, very important phrase. Why? Because when it comes to the acceptance of deeds, there are so many conditions, number one, and there are so many undoubts, and there are so many sense of an assurance to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted from us and what has not been accepted yet. So when Nabi Rasulullah says وَعَمَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَقْبُولٌ, that means Alhamdulillah. Literally speaking, we have clinched something inshallah. But wait, it's not a haste to the conclusion yet. So you want to start gradually when it comes to the matter of acceptance. Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam mentions one beautiful hadith. He says if you want to make sure that you're not walking on the edge, right? Or you want to make sure that you have not fallen off from the edge, لا يخلق مؤمن بين ثلاث خصال. A mu'min, a believer, would not be annihilated, would not be destroyed, would not be diverted, would not lose the path as long as he or she maintains between three attributes. What are those three attributes? Shahadatu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. First attribute is to bear witness that there is only one God, and that one God is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has no companion, has no partner with him. The topic of Tawheed. Having faith, having Iman. Iman on one God, not on multiple gods. A lot of times say, okay, let's check. No, wait a minute. We say Iman, having faith on one God, we can talk about it a lot. Believe it or not, for some of us, our cell phone will be our God. Believe it or not, for some of us, our car will be our God. For some of us, our job will be our God. For some of us, our families will be our God. For some of us, even our habits will be our God. For some of us, playing games online and social media will become our God. Right? It depends how you understand the whole concept of who Allah is. You probably spend more time on all of stuff that I mentioned than with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we tend to we expect results from the stuff that I just mentioned, beside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have a way to go when it comes to having faith on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the first stage. Right? Then Imam Sajjad continues. He says the second one was shafa'at Rasulullah. Second one is the stage of accepting the shafa'ah, bear witnessing that Nabi Rasulullah, the Khatam al-Nabiyyin, has the status of shafa'ah, has the status of intercession. He's able to intercede for the mu'mineen and mu'minat and for whoever he wants at the side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because Allah has given him that power. And number three, wasa'at rahmatullah. And this diversity, the vastness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. So three principles we always have to remember. Number one, monotheism. Having faith in only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not in the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is where it becomes different. A lot of times we get in the habit. If I don't go to work, I know my paycheck is going to become less, right? So automatically I see the paycheck coming from my work. No, I have to see the paycheck, the work, the sick days that I have, all the problems that may come that will not even let me to go to work, or the raise and the compensation, everything with the whole package. I have to see it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From working, I have to find the connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From studying, I have to find connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? From even drinking tea as we're sitting in the majlis, I have to see the connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can even contemplate on the teas that you guys are having right now. Imagine how many tea bags are being sold on every minute, every second around the world, right? And out of all of those millions, billions tea bags that are getting sold, the one that was purchased and was come to this masjid on this night, it was used to become a tea to be provided for those who have fasted for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That tea feels very special. Now, if you want to talk about the leaves of the tea inside of the tea bag, you get the possibilities. How many billions tea leaves we have in the world? Out of all of those, this particular one that they have used tonight had the bounty to be served for those who have fasted for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Constantly drawing the connection from every simple thing that we have on a daily basis with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the topic of monotheism. Monotheism is not only to say Allahu Akbar or say La ilaha. Yes, that's the verbal part of it. The verbal part, if it does not have that inner concept in it, is just sounds. Sounds by itself will not have any impact. Vice versa, if someone claims that, okay, I'm not going to do the verbal, I'm just going to focus on my heart, again, it's not going to function. Because the action consists of both aspects of it, right? The inner and the outer. I cannot just take one part of it. And the reason I'm saying this is because usually this happens. For example, when it comes to the topic of namaz or the prayer, some of us, we focus so much on the outer aspect. Some of us, we focus so much on the inner aspect. Where the moderation that Sirat al-Mustaqim is to reconcile both of them. You cannot pick one over another. And that applies to every deed within the religion. Some of us, we may become very outwardly person when it comes to religious ideology and paradigm. So that leads to generalization and constantly judging people according to their appearance. Vice versa, some of us, we may become very inner world person. So we always try to find these out of the ordinary, the miraculous things, the miraculous stories, right? And we tend to forget about the external deeds that Allah has made it obligatory upon us. No, it's both together. I cannot pick one over another. As I do a deed, as I fulfill part of my ta'ah, part of my ubudiyah, part of my worshipping, I have to make sure my heart and my mind and my sensation are active within that deed as well. So that's why they say when you want to start your salah, make sure before salah you do a good wudu. Good wudu doesn't mean to put too much water. No, it means to take that 1 or 2 seconds before you do wudu, think about your intention. When you say qurbatan ilallah, what is that supposed to do for you? We say it so many times per day, it just becomes a habit. Month of Ramadan, a month in which we're supposed to break those habits. Right? Take it from minimum, push it a little bit up. This is how we grow. If you don't push ourselves, are we going to grow? Here, those who mashallah, they always talk about diet, and the brothers are not here, right? If I don't go to gym, what's going to happen? Am I going to get my body built? Right? So everything we want, we have to work for it. If I don't go to work, I'm not going to get any money. If I don't study, I'm not going to become a learned person. Very similar thing. Even if you want the tea, you have to get up from your place, go to that the thermos and pour yourself a tea. This pouring is going to take some calorie, right? I cannot just sit there and say, okay, the tea will come to me, inshallah, right? So the same thing applies to the things of religion. Same thing applies to the 3 conditions that Imam Sajjad mentioned. So when he says we have to find ourselves between these 3, number 1, see everything underneath Tawheed, monotheism, right? Number 2, believe in the topic of Shafa'ah. Imam is trying to give us that hope. Because finding everything with Tawheed may be a little bit difficult. It takes time. That's why we have a lifetime, right? So believe in the topic of Shafa'ah. Meaning that there is this way that Nabi Rasulullah inshallah will intercede. Not even that, further than that, believe in the vastness of the rahmah, of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning never give up. Constantly strive, constantly try. If you hit the ground, okay, get up and go. But learn from the mistakes. Not to say, okay, it's already passed, the years has passed, I don't have any more choice. No, my mom is saying the path is wide open. Take advantage of the mercy, take advantage of the shafa'ah, try to build that monotheism. Try to build that, right? So this is one hadith. Then there is a second hadith in which Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam mentions, and he says, Sifatan la yaqbalu Allah subhanahu al-amal illa biha. At-taqa wal-ikhlas. He says there are 2 attributes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never accept a single deed except through these 2. So if these 2 are there, as if it's a condition. Right? Must condition. If these conditions are not met, the deed will not be accepted. What are those 2? Number 1, at-taqa. Number 2, ikhlas. 1, piety. 2, sincerity. Why do we fast? Allah says in the Quran, why? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. See how Amir al-Mu'mineen makes a connection? It's the fasting you're doing is the practicing of taqwa. That's part of it. You need the second attribute. What's the second attribute? Ikhlas. Sincerity. So here's where we have to work on it. It's internal. Externally, I cannot practice ikhlas. Internally, I have to work on it. And internally has so many, it becomes very thorough. Ikhlas becomes very thorough. Why do I say very thorough? Very same Amir al-Mu'mineen. The companions, they see him constantly giving away the wealth that he would earn. A lot of times, we hear the stories of Amir al-Mu'mineen, eating only from a dried, barley bread and perhaps, some salt and water. Very simple, modest lifestyle. But in reality, Amir al-Mu'minin at his time, he was a millionaire, right? He had so much wealth, he had so much farms, he had so much wells, like the water wells, right? And that time, water well was like, you're like basically a millionaire, because everybody needed water for farming. So many things Amir al-Mu'minin had harvested, like so many products would come up to him. And I think I told you this story before. One day, there was discussion between Talha and Zubair, and they were like talking about the different companions, right? Of who is the most successful person in Medina. So as they were using different names of such and such is good, such and such as like the second, third, fourth, like imagine the top 5 successful people of Medina. They start naming like different Sahaba, different Sahaba, different Sahaba, and one person is there is like, what about Amir al-Mu'minin? Those guys say, Amir al-Mu'minin? No, he doesn't have any money. He's poor. I mean, look at the shoes that he wears. Look at the clothing that he wears, right? He doesn't have, look at the house that he has. So they use the sense of mockery. That companion was the follower of Amir al-Mu'minin. He goes to Amir al-Mu'minin. And he's like, upset. He goes, Amir al-Mu'minin, this is what happens. And these guys are literally mocking you in front of everybody, saying that you don't have anything to show. Amir al-Mu'minin says, if that's what they say, call them to come. Like, okay. They call them from the other side. Amir al-Mu'minin tells his worker, he says, tell all of the guys to bring whatever they have harvested today only, and only today, to this, let's say place. They start bringing and bringing and bringing and bringing and bringing and bringing and bringing. It becomes a mountain, like a hill, full of, mashallah, products. Then those two come. He says, look, see all of this? This is a product, right? I do not have even a single share with someone else. I do not have any partner in this. It's all mine. Just to show you that if I want, I have it. But what I do, takes a piece of paper, pen and a paper, donates all of it. Donates all of it for the sake of poor and the needy. So some of the Ashab, they told Amir al-Mu'minin, why do you do so much of giving away? Why do you do so much of infaq? Why do you so generous in giving away? At least keep some for yourself and for your family. They're not saying wrong. Make it portion. Maybe do it 50-50, maybe do 70-30%. Keep some for yourself and for your family. Amir al-Mu'minin tells around and says, Wallah, if I knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted a one single deed of me, of giving away all of this, I would have stuck and I would have done portions. Because I do know, I'll give you everything. So that's Amir al-Mu'minin, right? The two sifat, the two attributes. One, at-taqa, second one, ikhlas. Piety and sincerity. So all of this for what? To understand when Allah says, or when Nabi Rasulullah says, in this month, your deeds are accepted, as if again, all of this thoroughness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has pushed them aside a little bit. Again, making the ground ready for us to do inshallah more, and inshallah achieve a little bit more in this month, inshallah. Now, when it comes to the acceptance of deeds, sometimes we aim for the deed, sometimes we have to understand what are the obstacles that will prevent our deeds from being accepted. So that by itself is a very lengthy discussion. So they categorize those deeds in 3 groups. They say either the deeds come from the misconceptions of ideology. For example, if someone starts to act commit the act of polytheism. Yes. Or if someone yes. Falls out of the faith, right? If someone has this inner hypocrisy, these by itself, by default, it makes the deeds not to be accepted. This is at the stage of mind or the ideology. What about actions? The actions, again, they divide it to 2 groups. They say one is the general deeds, which become obstacle. This third one are particular deeds, which become obstacles. And there are so many. What are the general ones? The general ones technically is to take every sinful conduct or every sinful act as lightly as possible. Right? Looking at the sins and saying, okay, it's one sin, inshallah, Allah will forgive. Yes, Allah will forgive, but this mindset of saying it's only one time, it's only one night, it's only 1 hour, it's only this time. This mindset is the problem, not the deed itself. The deed can be forgiven, but the mindset cannot be changed. That's the problem. If I don't change the mindset, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive the deed, the mindset again generates the very same deed. And that's why the ones who pass away from the dunya, right? The kuffar and mushrikeen, Allah says, like, even if you, take you guys back to the dunya, you will continue doing the very same actions that you were doing as before. Why? The mindset is set, right? When the mindset is set, it constantly does the very same actions. So it goes back to change of that mindset, the change of that perception that we have, the change of that ideology, right? The change of understanding and whereabouts, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly providing for us. Not only providing for us, but literally like doing every possible chance to make sure we find that guidance for the sake of our own prosperity. Nothing is in it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will not become more of Allah if we all become pious. He will not become less of Allah if we all go diverted. Right? Allah is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything He does, everything He prescribed for us, everything He has made it obligatory upon us for the sake of our own selves. So that we can clinch up and actually experience what does it mean to be a true human being. That's the whole reality, that's the whole purpose of life. And that's why Nabi Rasulullah mentions that in this month your deeds are accepted, meaning to take advantage of the hours and the months and the days and the nights of this month. So if you move on from the general aspects, I want to talk about a couple of the particular ones. When it comes to particular actions which prevent our deeds from being accepted, again there are lists of it. First and foremost is the thirst for dunya. Is this thirst for wanting more? Al-hakamut takathur, right? The more the merrier. If it's only for the sake of the more the merrier, it becomes al-hakamut takathur. I always want more and more and more and more. I don't even know why. I just want it, right? And that's the nature of human being, the way it's created. It wants more, but the more of what is important. Yes, we want the more of that perfection, that's perfect. But we want the more of something that we cannot keep, we cannot use, we cannot do anything with it. We just become a bank for it for the rest of the people. That's a big loss. And we're using the best of our times, right? That's number one. Number two, when it comes to the topic of the social sins, such as accusation, such as backbiting, such as enviness. The stuff that we have heard it probably quite a bit, but a lot of times we don't realize, a lot of times what happens, some people, they come to the shield and they constantly complain about the difficulty of their lives, right? Oh, this has happened, that has happened, I try whatever I can, but nothing opens up. You look back at their life, you see, a lot of it comes from what? The very same simple concept, the stuff that we do with our tongue. False accusation, for example. Backbiting, for example. Topic of enviness, right? The topic of arrogance. All of internal. We haven't got into the external deeds yet. All of this, as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put a hold on them in the month of Ramadan. In what way? In prescribing to us the fasting. So what does that imply? Me and you, we have to focus on not to open the path again for all of this stuff to start to regenerate again. And usually when does it regenerate? The minute we have the iftar, the minute the energy kicks in, the minute we get a little bit of that, like the sugar rush, mashallah, the mindset is set, right? The same stuff happens and happens and happens and happens again, right? That's why I have to do what? I have to make sure I put a stop to it. Allah is is giving us the fasting, but we cannot fast 24/7. We cannot fast the whole month, days and nights. I just have to take the concept from the fasting hours and apply it to the time that I'm not fasting. It's that sense of awareness. That okay, if I'm able to maintain myself, inshallah, throughout the day from backbiting, inshallah, I can do so from the time of the iftar to the time of suhoor. If I can prevent myself from enviness throughout the day because I'm fasting, I'm I'm out of it completely, I can apply the same concept after iftar to the suhoor. It needs practice. And before practice needs that awareness. I have to make sure I make those changes before it becomes too late. As Amir al-Mu'mineen says, فَاعْتَبِرُوا بِمَا كَانَ مِنْ فِعْلِ اللَّهِ بِإِبْلِيسِ. اعتبروا, right? Learn the lesson from whom? The big fella, Iblis, the shaitan. How many years of worship? And Amir al-Mu'mineen at the khutbah says, we don't even know, are those like the human years that we know, the calendar years, or the spiritual years? The spiritual years, like, you know, mashallah, like you can say what? 1,000 of this year probably equals to 1 minute of that year, right? How many years? At least 6,000 years worth of worship. How many prayers have you done? How many zikr have you said? How many, like, you know, fasting have you done? How many, like, good deeds we have done? 6,000 worth of praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In one moment, one action, one takabbur, all of it is gone. Right? So Amir al-Mu'min says, فَاعْتَبِرُوا بِمَا كَانَ مِنْ فَعْلِ اللَّهِ بِإِبْلِيسِ إِذْ أَحْبَتَ عَمَلَهُ الطَّوِيلَ وَجُهْدَهُ الْجَهِيدَ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala voided his deeds, right? Even though his deeds was a lot. When it comes to quantity, it was a lot. When it comes to quality, it lagged those two characters. Actually, it didn't lag, you can say, yeah, like both of them. Taqwa and ikhlas. These two, if they're combined, the topic of takabbur will never happen. When does the takabbur, when does the arrogance, when does enviness, when does this backbiting, when does this like false accusation happens? When we find ourselves at the stage when, and usually we don't realize it, when we find ourselves in the stage of a flaw. The ones, like, you know, who like, you know, feel like they have a sense of like a flaw within themselves, or they feel like they have some sort of incompleteness within themselves, they tend to become envious towards others. Why he gets to go to that better school and I cannot go to? Why he gets to get that better job and I cannot get the same one? Why can't he drive such and such car and I cannot, right? Why does he get that special like girl and I cannot? There's something that I don't have, I miss, and I see it in the other people's hands. And I start envying. And envying is the start, right? Envying is not only this mentality, but as Nabi Rasulullah says, envy is like a fire. It burns through the good deeds, just like as the fire burns through woods. So he says in the Qiyamah, a group of people get resurrected. When it comes to the time of their accountability, when they look at their actions, there is nothing there except for bad deeds. They ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have done so many good deeds. And they're right, you know, they have done so many good deeds in the dunya. And Allah tells them, yes, you have done so many good deeds. At the same time, you had this problem with enviness. And enviness eats up all of your good deeds. It acts as a filter. All it leaves behind are the bad ones, or the sinful ones, or the sins. Not only like an enviness, but even backbiting. Similar hadith with the backbiting. So what's an alternative to this? I'll do so many good things, and at the same time, one event, one moment, one stage, one word, one look, one wrong look, it burns up everything. All the good ones. If we would burn everything, we would be good because the bad ones would get burned too, but no. It's a smart fire. It only goes after good deeds, right? So what should I do? What else can we do? In the month of Ramadan, in the most blissful month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what can we do that inshallah we can, you know, maximize? When Nabi Rasulullah says, وَعَمَالَكُمْ فِيهِمَا قُبُولًا, when your deeds are in this month, like, you know, accepted, what can I do that inshallah I can benefit the utmost amount? Again, the very same Nabi Rasulullah mentions. Yes, enviness, backbiting, they burn through the good deeds just like as the fire burns through the wood. But guess what? There's another deed that burns through the bad deeds and leaves the good ones. What is that? حب أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه الصلاة والسلام.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
That's why we're so blissful. That's why we're supposed to constantly do such the shukr for this one, like, you know, bounty that we all have been given. And a lot of times we don't even know how we've been given. Alhamdulillah, we were raised in the family, for most of us. This one ni'mah of wilayah. The ni'mah of wilayah is one thing, is to have that hope, that's good. But the other part of it is to act upon the hope, to act upon that affection, to act upon the love of the Amir al-Mu'mineen. Love by itself is not enough. Remember the topic of taking the outer versus the inner aspect of a deed? The very same topic of velayat or the hubb of Amir al-Mu'mineen has the two aspects as well. The outer aspect, mashallah, we all are good because it's tangible. I can express it, right? I can do a lot of deeds in order to express my love for the Ahlul Bayt. I can sponsor the program, I can sponsor majlis, I can do recite the majlis, I can do madahi, I can recite the Quran. A lot of tangible items I can do in order to express my love for the Ahlul Bayt. What is that inner aspect of it? Right? What is that inner aspect of it? The inner aspect comes from two parts. One is tawalla, one is tabarruk. Both together. I cannot pick one side, leave the other. And that's what usually happens. We always go for the sweet part. The sweet part is what? To express our love for the Ahlul Bayt. MashaAllah, we all alhamdulillah, we try. No, we have to need both sides of it. It's the sweetness of expressing our love for the Ahlul Bayt and the bitterness perhaps of staying away and pushing aside those who are the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt. It has two sides of it. I cannot take only one part of it and make that my role model and say, okay, as long as I push for this, everything else will be good. Yes, everything else will be good, but I have to filter it myself. I have to make sure while I'm pushing for the love of the Ahlul Bayt, especially love of Amir al-Mu'mineen, love of Imam al-Hussein, or all of the Ahlul Bayt, love of Imam of time, at the same time I get this sense of understanding of who are the enemies in which Ahlul Bayt are talking about. And what am I supposed to act upon them? How am I supposed to feel towards them? Right? It's double-sided coin. You cannot just take one part of it. So inshallah we'll ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this beautiful night and alhamdulillah the beautiful days of the month of Ramadan to grant to all of us the true ma'rifah of the Ahlul Bayt and the Quran, and inshallah the tawfiq of being able to maximize our time in terms of the effort that we put in, inshallah, in clinching what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provisioned for us, and we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the maximum amount of effort for the nights of Badr, and inshallah grant all of us the true shafa'ah of Nabi Rasulullah and the Ahlul Bayt and the Quran, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide mercy and forgiveness upon all of us and upon all of the mahrumin and mahrumat, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide shafa and cure for all of the mu'mineen and mu'minat who have come down with sicknesses. And also we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to extend His support and mercy upon all of the oppressed ones around the world, especially the people of Gaza and Palestine. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the right of these nights and days to hasten the appearance of our Imam of time, and inshallah grant all of us the tawfiq and bounty to be part of his companions. Let's remember the marhumin and marhumat of the community, and inshallah we can recite aloud salawat followed by surah al-Fatiha.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل